Hello, everyone. This is Dan Wisenhunt, editor and publisher of Decaturish.com. Today is July 15th, and the Decaturish Twitch show is back. I know all 8 of you who watch us every episode missed us. We're glad to see you again. We hope your numbers and ranks will grow. Our guests today are Marjorie Hall with DeKalb Strong. Marjorie, how are you?
I am doing well.
Thank you for joining us. And Decaturish contributor Crystal Jarvis. Crystal, how are you? You're on mute. Good to see you. Um, Decaturish contributor Hans Utz is here as well. Hans, how are you?
Well, thanks for asking.
Thank you for joining us. And as always, George Cheedy, another Decaturish contributor, is with us as well. George, how are you today?
I exist.
Don't we all? So we're just don't have a whole big agenda for the show today. We're kind of getting our bearings. I think a lot of us took the weekend off. Hold on. Working on technical stuff. Hold on. Anyway, um, so we don't have a big agenda. We're all kind of reacting to the news. We all kind of got a gut punch. I think last week when schools started announcing that there would be closures, there would be virtual learning, and I wanted to start my comments today with a story, and I hope will make some of this make sense for everybody. So when my son was born, he had a brain injury, and at the time they couldn't tell us a whole lot about him or what was going to happen to him or what he was going to do with his life. We didn't know, for example, if he was going to walk or talk or dress himself or feed himself. And if you're a new parent and you haven't had a child before, that is scary as shit. So we went for 2, 3 years not really knowing what the story was going to be with him. And thank God, he has done really well and he has met all of his milestones. So we were really looking forward to his first day of kindergarten. We bought our house right down the street from the little elementary school that we would like to attend. So I see a lot of this online where parents are like, man, I'm really sad about what happened and I wish my child could go to school. And you have people, presumably a lot of them who don't have kids, who chime in and say, well, it's the safest decision. It's the best for everyone. As if we don't love our children and want them to be safe. This isn't about us wanting them to not be safe or be safe. This is about the grief that parents feel for their children and that they're not going to be able to do the things that children ordinarily get to do. And we don't know what is going to happen with them. We get a lot of, your kids are resilient, they'll be fine. Well, some will, some might not be. We don't know. We're going to learn, aren't we? So what I would like to say is that if you are watching and you don't have children and you think that this is the best decision, uh, and you see a friend who maybe is sad that their child doesn't get to go to school, unless you have encouraging words for that person, do every parent on this planet a favor and shut up. We have heard all of the lectures. We have heard them. We mostly agree with them. And even though we have heard them and we mostly agree with them, this situation still sucks ass because the country is being run into the ground by morons, and our children have to pay for it. So that is my public service announcement today. Let the parents who have children who are going to start school this year grieve, please. We've heard your lectures. We know it's the right decision. We agree that it's the right decision. It still sucks ass. Okay, that's it.
Dan,
Yeah, go.
Dan, I want to add because I want to agree with you 100%. And I want to say that even if you do have kids, and please, I actually saw this on Facebook. Please don't judge the people for whatever decisions that they make,
Exactly.
or please don't judge them for whatever opinions or grief they may suffer from school not opening. Everyone does not have the same economic background.
That's right.
Everyone does not have the same opportunities. I'm very fortunate to be able to work from home and make money from home, but everyone does not have that opportunity. So,
Mm-hmm.
because of that, because everyone's lives are different, some people may actually be depending on school in order to
Mm-hmm.
make ends meet. We are not being supported by the government like some other countries have been. And
Mm-hmm.
our response to this entire situation is literally the worst on the planet. We're the strongest country on this planet, but yet our response to this is the worst. So, just backing up what you were saying, even if you are a parent, you don't know what goes on from household to household. Just like, you were saying, it's a very scary situation. Someone telling you they don't know if your son's going to walk or talk, and being able to see him get to this point, to where this is a very big milestone for your son this year. And, celebrating that, and then to lose that celebration is no different from some other people who had to cancel their weddings that they may have been planning for 1 to 2 years this year. That's something I wrote about recently, or have been writing about, how someone had asked a client that I was working with, that's actually interestingly enough, but she would have had to cancel her wedding if she would have listened to her family and pushed her date back. So,
Yeah.
anyways, just to add to that,
Yeah,
we
and
all
I
have our
totally
different
agree. Like,
struggles.
my family's gonna be fine. We have
Hmm.
we have a source of income right now. We have some support. We can work within the confines of what we've been given. Some other families are
Hmm.
just hosed. They have no options. They have no family
Hmm.
nearby. Especially the
Hmm.
parents of children that have special needs. I mean, I can't even
Oh, yeah,
imagine.
absolutely.
Where
Well, and that
what?
is a bit concern that I have. And again, I want to say that I agree that I think DeKalb County schools made this decision that they had to make to go
They
ahead
did.
and delay the opening of schools. But what upsets me is I feel like that there are definitely people who don't really want to acknowledge or deal with the scope of the negative consequences that emanate from schools being closed. The fact is, there are that with all we know about how absolutely vital early education is, I'm really disturbed by how many people I am seeing use rhetoric saying things like it's not a big deal to take a gap year. It's like, I'm sorry, it is a big year for a 5-year-old to take a gap year. And we fought so hard for kindergarten. We've been trying to fight for universal pre-K as these key progressive goals. And then to see some people say, you know what, it doesn't matter after all. And if you say that it does, you're no different than the protesters who were carrying guns around the Capitol because they want haircuts. And
Mm.
there's some daylight between saying, I think that we need to be really careful about how we make decisions and really evaluate then as we go forward in this, and really take into account the negative consequences of schools being closed for little kids, for families with special needs kids who are. I was talking to a parent today who's feeling kind of desperate. He's like, our window in which we can intervene in our son's life to make a difference is not unlimited. And we are losing time. And there are kids for whom losing these services in this time will have lifelong consequences. And as we look through the make these decisions, we've got to be clear-eyed about that and understand we can't just shut this down without consequences. And the people who suffer most, what really frustrates me is seeing financially comfortable middle-class families where everybody is still employed, really being dismissive of the
Hmm.
concerns of people who are kind of
Yes.
desperate because of
Hmm.
this.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
and that gets to the point. I mean, you spent a lot of time talking about the impact on the kids, but a single mom earning hourly
Right.
wages, daylight hour work, who can't
Hmm.
afford specialized childcare, who can't, kids are too young to leave at home by themselves.
Hmm.
This is economically devastating on literally every metric in terms of health, in terms of family safety, the risk that she faces with kids at home and not being able to work is greater than COVID, without a question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not that's not obviously the case for everyone. And I think in aggregate, from a public health standpoint, the decision that was made is the only decision, frankly, that could be made. But for us to be flippant about it is shitty, without question. I think a small amount of empathy in all directions might go a very, very long way here.
Yeah, we're all
So
grieving.
I think even so, I'm the asshole who was online this morning, talking about how I see a nefarious Republican plot in the drive to push schools to be open. I'm overstating how much of an asshole I actually was, but
I mean, I agreed with you.
yeah, but I mean, here's the thing. I mean, and you're right. Like, there is an empathy gap right now, and there is a sort of a cultural divide between like the childless, middle-aged, people weighing in on this stuff, and the folks where the rubber really is meeting the road. Like, and you've got a 9-year-old, and you're have this sort of ridiculous choice that you've got to make between going to school, or sending your kid to school and going to work, or staying home and losing everything, and the kid being damaged. And I mean damaged, and let's not mince words. Like, children are going to be damaged by what happens over the next 18 months because of the way the world is going to work. Like, our kids are going to grow up like somebody was growing up in the middle of the Depression to some degree, in terms of cultural attitudes and abilities and the rest of it.
It's I don't mean to interrupt, George, but the best analogy that I heard was, it's like the London Blitz. It's arbitrary death, extreme disruption that happens infrequently and without warning. Everybody is panicked about it. There's nothing you can do about it whatsoever. You're not really sure how long it's going to last. And basically, life's on hold until it's over. It's
Right.
Terrible.
I mean, yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's also a math problem to some degree. Because, I mean, really, like, the kind of damage that children are going to take is quantifiable. Like, it's quantifiable in terms of what their earning potential is going to look like, their international competitiveness, their ability to work and play well with others. We can like, there's some hard work that some very smart people probably need to be working on, if they're not already, to say, look, this is the kind of damage families are going to take, and we need to find a way to, however, account for that, moving forward, like to compensate, if that's one way to look at it, to restructure what happens in the next 2 years and 4 years and 10 years, so that we account for what happens today. Like, and that conversation, if to the degree that conversation is happening, I don't hear it. Like, I don't know what people are talking about. They're just going to lay it on folks who just happen to be in the most vulnerable position right now, and that bothers me. Like, well, what do we do about it?
Well, and the problem is, George, too, that I see that is what's really distressing me right now is that because everything in this environment that we've been living in for a little while now, because everything so immediately becomes super polarized, I feel like right now there's only two camps. You're either a mask hole who says that, who is spreading around the pandemic video and saying it's all a hoax and doesn't believe it, or you're saying, right. Or you're on the other side and saying, we need to all lock ourselves inside our homes and not do anything or go anywhere until there's zero risk. And the problem is neither one of those scenarios is workable long time. If we do the one, like, just pretend this is all a hoax, we're all gonna die. But we can't do the other either, because we can't say we shut everything down until there's zero risk from just COVID, without some accounting for the negative consequences. Everything's always a balancing act. Everything is always a risk of the risk and benefits of taking an action, or the risks of taking an action versus not taking an action. And we're going to have to eventually, not right now because it's too bad, we're going to have to figure out how to open things back up before we get to a zero risk environment. And how do we develop that risk tolerance? And especially, how do we do it if we can't stop screaming at each other and say that every time we say maybe we should consider opening things back up because of the harms this is causing people, and say that that's no different than marching around at a state capitol because you can't get a haircut. Like, we've got to find a way to get into a middle ground here.
What I think is deeply, deeply frustrating to me is that we now have like 75 countries that have shown us how they could do it in a way that actually works. I mean, so it's actually not, this is not a policy problem. Like, we know what we need to do. So let's take Georgia, for example. Had Georgia held its shelter in place for 6 more weeks, 6 weeks longer, meaning that it would have ended 2 weeks ago, we would be like
we would
New
be
York.
talking about going back to school.
We would be back in school, right?
Crystal?
So it's just,
No, we would not. But I'm just, we won't, we wouldn't. Okay. I think it's very interesting because did we not do what you're saying that we did, Marjorie, in terms of, did they not roll back? So they did they put us on restrictions, and then they rolled out these plans to socially distance, but still be able to shop and get a haircut and, go to the beach. Remember, the governor opened up the beaches. But look what we are.
We didn't do it right.
That.
We
didn't do it right at all.
We did it way too early.
Exactly.
But then the thing is, I am going to so I literally speak to students in China every day. Not every day, but I tutor children in China. They sat at home for months and months and months. And yes, mentally, they were not the same people anymore, because it is taxing on anyone to do that. But now they are free. So, but they're also their environment, or the way their government works is completely different from ours. They don't have freedom of speech like we do. They can't go in the middle of a pandemic and stand there and say, "I don't want to wear a mask," and rip it off. They can't do any of those things.
Spain, Italy, and Germany do, though, right? I mean, so we do have clear Western open democracies that have given us examples of how concerted efforts for 2 to 3 months bent the curve down. And you began to see that in the data even here in the U.S. with the shelter in place. You saw that curve come down. Now, where I agree with you, Crystal, is we saw that curve slightly come down.
Yeah.
Like, we needed to hold for a fair bit longer. But we were bending that curve down. And then, pow, we opened it up. And what we're seeing right now is not unknowable. The numbers that we're seeing right now are a mathematical certainty that every epidemiologist, a month and a half ago when we reopened, said was coming.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, had we taken it seriously, had we sheltered in place, which is largely what we were attempting to do in early April, that was a strict shelter in place. Restaurants were closed. The grocery stores were basically it. And the only reason why we weren't masked then is because we were being freaking told by the CDC not to wear masks. But now we know better. Had we taken that sort of shelter in place a couple extra months, we would be in the place.
We would have been fine.
Yeah.
Trump initially said August. I agree that by August, we would have been on a road. I still don't think we would have been back in school, or should have been back in schools. Everything comes out of those schools. They're disgusting. I'm sorry. They truly are. I mean,
little pathogen factories.
So I think that where I guess what I'm most baffled by is not only the government's response to it, because we have, I mean, Dan has pretty much said our government, we're being run by morons and they're running it into the ground.
Yeah, I believe I
But
did say
my
that.
bigger yeah, but my bigger question is, why are we responding in such a negative way? Why are we suddenly equating not wearing a mask to our rights as people?
I would like
Why
to
is that
respond
happening?
because this is a segue into something I was going to say anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
I get press releases from Governor Kemp's office, and I have no animus towards Governor Kemp's press people, but every time I get, remember, this is the governor who was one of the first governors in the country who said, "Okay, we're past the point or where, cases are going down, hospital vacancies are happening, we need to open it back up." And every time I get a press release from him now, I have such a hard time restraining myself. I want to respond to all and be like, "My son can't go to school because of you." And I
Right.
and I think
Right.
to your point, the reason that we are dealing with the situation that we're dealing with now is because the people who are supposed to be leading this response have abdicated all leadership responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
They've put it on us to enforce. And guess what?
Right.
We all have different opinions and needs and situations about how to deal with it. How many people in this room know somebody who took a vacation and didn't post about that shit on social media? I do. I bet some of you do too. Um,
Yeah, I know some people that did have
yeah,
vacation, but
didn't
yeah.
post about it on social media, didn't say a word. That is the problem when you have a lack of leadership, is you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
coordinated federal response. And this is really, like, I know some people say the federal government does more harm than good. In this case, that's when you need the federal government to step in and coordinate a response on masks, schools, testing, everything. Like,
to,
that's
to, to just set the standard that this is a shared sacrifice,
right.
that we're all in together and we have to have one another's backs. If we don't have each other's backs, then we all die. And
Right.
that it requires, like, frankly, that requires the president. That's kind of the
Yes.
core role of the United States president. And God knows that's not what we're going to get from this
People
one.
definitely should not be mad at the schools for doing what they did. They did what they had to do. I understand why they did it. I ain't mad at him. Marshall Orson, you're my school board chair. You're the school board chair. You're my school board rep. I ain't mad at you and the board. I'm mad at our state and federal leaders who have washed their hands of this and told everyone in this country, "Sorry, you're on your own. Good luck with that."
Well, the
That's
thing that drives me most crazy too, I mean, one, I guess I the reopening that I would have liked to see is to stay on a much stricter lockdown through the summers and then open up schools before we open up bars, because I think they're more important, and get to a place where we can provide that essential service before we all go party. But I also don't understand it's a very strange disconnect in this very weird time we're living in, where the people who are most enthusiastic about wanting to get back to normal life are the people who are resistant to taking a really simple step to help that happen by wearing a mask and washing your hands more. I mean, it's such a no-brainer, but it's everything has become so polarized and so symbolic, and right now it has become a symbol for everybody. You put on a mask to let people know that you are taking this seriously, or you don't wear one because you want to send a message that you don't. And it frustrates me that the people who so much want to reopen, I would love that too, won't do anything to help that happen. Even this one little thing that we could do that would make a difference.
it
You
just goes
know,
back to self-policing. You read stories all the time where two people, stabbed each other because one of them wasn't wearing a mask and somebody told them that they had to. Like, it's not our job to enforce masking at knife point. in this country. You know, people have
So,
taken it upon themselves to do it because there are no leaders. George, go ahead.
no, just that. Well, that's it, that there are no leaders. Like, it's more than just the polarization, because I'm going to be frank, like, people on the left and the right are entirely capable of being morons right now. Um, it's this generalized lack of respect for authority, period, that is going on. Like, we have a president who proves more or less every day that he should not be trusted and that you should not listen to him. Um, Even if he was standing up and saying the right things at this point, I'm not sure people would actually listen to him because he's that toxic. And like, when that kind of erosion of authority has occurred, that I just think it's poisoned everything. Like, the idea that the CDC that people would ignore medical authority under these circumstances, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, would have been inconceivable to me, but here we are. And again, it's not just Republicans, although they're driving the train right now. But like, I get the pandemic stuff still from as many liberals as I do conservatives.
Oh,
Like,
do you? Oh,
I
that's
do.
terrible.
It's terrible, but it's true. Like, Black women who have the Tuskegee experiment rolling around in the back of their head, looking at this stuff going, yeah, I might believe that. And Bill Gates is, the Antichrist. It's still out there. And it's part of the reason why you look at a crowd of 20-something-year-olds like partying in the middle of Edgewood before they start a gunfight. And I'm looking around like, why are you even out here? What the hell is wrong with you? Oh, there's like, it's fine. We're going to be fine, because they're all liars anyway. And there's something in it for them, and we don't trust them.
There is something though where I'm going to diverge a little bit from this is that there was at the beginning. I think when the postmortem is done on this, we're going to look at some of the messaging that did come from people in authority at the beginning of the pandemic as causal to some of the issues, right? Like the message that young people were safe and this was primarily an old person problem. I mean, that's all my 20-year-old self needed to see. Right? Like, that's all I needed to know to go show up in the Ozarks at some insane pool without masks. The early parts of it, they also said, now I kind of understand that they said you don't need to wear a mask because they were protecting the very limited supplies of PPE for the actual first responders and the folks that were on the front lines in the hospitals. But now we're having to undo that. We taught everybody masks weren't necessary. And now people are like, well, didn't you say that didn't? And the messaging that came out at the time was masks don't stop you from getting the virus. That's 100% correct. Masks don't stop you from getting the virus. They stop you from giving it to someone else. But that second part never got communicated at the beginning. And now we're trying to catch up. And so, I mean, there is, yeah, there's been a lack of leadership. Yeah, people are divided, but there's also been some grievous mistakes at the beginning of this that have contributed to where we are right now.
Let's get to some comments. Anasazi says, here in Cambridge, Massachusetts right now, and they are launching a hybrid model, stressing the negative impact of distance learning on students, especially younger learners who learn through socialization. But Cambridge invests in public schools rather than funding it at the lowest margin as DeKalb and other systems do. So I guess that Cambridge Chamber of Commerce in our comments. I don't know. Cambridge sounds pretty good. Your kid can go to school. I might be going there.
I lived at Cambridge is also very, very expensive. I lived in Boston for a while.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thank goodness that, they have some opportunities to be able to do that and hopefully socially distance. But I think one of the biggest things with doing a hybrid model, if we're not ready to go back because we're going to continue to spread, we're just not ready. in some aspects. So if that's the case for what's going on in Boston, then that's something to think about, because it only takes one. I mean, the way coals will run through a school, the coronavirus, from my understanding, spreads at a far more rapid pace. So I guess they're probably going to do switch the students out for a couple of days. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a
To
very
see how that's
ambitious virus. Vesmouth says, I feel like Americans in general lack the social understanding and capacity to handle adversity. We talk a good game of our forefathers' struggle, but we can't even stay home for 3 months without freaking out and throwing open the doors because the refrigerated trucks weren't full. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
I don't either.
there's some interesting data out there on the response to infection that some of the so Italy is right next to Croatia and all of the former Yugoslav Republic, and all of the countries that were a part of the Bosnian War. Italy melted down and basically, so Italy, nowhere near as bad as the United States. Let me just take the US off the map for this conversation. But Italy had it about as bad as it can be. None of those countries around Italy did, because they all are deeply familiar with the strike. Like, there is still a shared sense of sacrifice and a recognition that is enculturated in the people of how bad things can get. And I just it's been demonstrated that some of these countries that have had these more recent serious upheavals have actually performed much better in terms of taking the steps necessary to combat the virus.
So keeping track of where I should move, Cambridge, Massachusetts, or perhaps Croatia.
Kosovo.
Or Kosovo. I'm writing this stuff down.
Well, and I think Kosovo,
Barbados.
I think it's one of the few countries that will still admit Americans right now, Dan.
Yeah.
So it's either like there's some islands in the Caribbean, and I think maybe Croatia. It's small. It's about 14 countries that Americans can travel to now.
So you're basically saying it's not for long that they don't that they continue to do.
Once all the Americans get in,
it's over.
So
I've been wanting to do it. I've wanted to escape to Nigeria. Like, that's been like my exit valve. Like, at some point, I'm like, yeah, all right, this is done. Like, I've got land in Nigeria somewhere. I could probably get a passport if I need to. Like, that was the plan. And I can't even go to Nigeria. Nigeria, like the shithole country, so to speak, is off the table. Like, this is
it's
we are being very humbled as Americans right now.
Demoralizing.
So a word to the Twitch says, City Schools of Decatur looked on the community numbers on community spread and said nope. They have a rubric for making a decision. They're just not pulling it out of a hat. They cited the Georgia Tech risk evaluation site. Anasazi replied, they put it on local school systems who have to be risk averse, or children's lives and teachers' lives are lost. I think a lot of schools had the same reaction. Is they looked at the community spread. I mean, it's higher now. Sarah Amos noted in her story about the school board last night that the spread is higher now than it was in March when they closed the schools. So, I mean, what other decision could they make? Really?
Although the unfortunate thing is we're about to have a very, very grim experiment with the children of, I believe, some Fulton schools are opening, and I believe Cobb County and Gwinnett. And so we're gonna see there are schools in the metro area that are opening, and we're about to have some non-theoretical data about the effects of that, and it's a little scary.
I don't want to lecture, but may the odds be ever in their favor.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would love it if we're all terribly wrong and
that'd be great.
Schools open up and everything's fine. It's just I don't think that's the best kind of science experiment.
No.
Using our children as guinea pigs concerns me.
I mean, the
And
Fulton in
I
particular
think
is.
the biggest.
No, go
Go
ahead,
ahead. Go
Crystal.
ahead.
No, 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 no. Go ahead, please.
No, I like what you were. I think you were going in a direction as to. I think I was going to kind of switch. Talk about the same subject, but switch a little bit. Go ahead.
All right, I was going to say, especially in Fulton County, where basically the ICU beds are full, right? I mean, it surprises
Mm-hmm.
me a little bit in the major area around the metro where, I mean, even if the kids aren't sick, even if they don't transmit the virus at the R naught number, there's just not the capacity in the hospitals. I mean, we're about to get exposed to what bad looks like. We think it's bad now. We're a couple weeks away from what bad really looks like.
I agree. And I don't know if we're ready for bad. Like, I mean,
I don't think
okay,
so.
like we've been warned bad, and then we hadn't seen bad, and so we all decided to be bad and go out
Be back.
and drink another one. And like, honestly, I'm not. Here's the thing I worry about is that bad will actually land in a way that we haven't seen yet, and we won't believe it. That we won't.
I
We
yeah.
won't believe that the hospitals are actually full, that there aren't any beds, that we'll keep doing things because we don't trust any of the information sources. By the way, I would like to bring this up, like, because this is something that popped up a day or so ago. There is a PhD researcher who works on epidemiology. She's leaving the state, but her name's Amber Schmidtke. And she has been doing a daily update on Georgia's response to COVID-19 that is brilliant, frankly. It's Fossey-esque. And Facebook just took a bunch of it down, declaring it spam. And it looks like it came under basically an attack that her page on Facebook was brigaded by anti-maskers, whatever we want to call it, who didn't want to see that data shared widely in the state, and they took it out.
Yeah.
I'm worried that people aren't going to believe that we're in hell when we actually end up falling right over the cliff.
Well, specifically what they did, and I know this because I've dealt with some of this before, is they manipulated Facebook's algorithm. They got on there and they flagged it as false enough times where their automated bot thing was like, oh yeah, it must be false. If 20 people are flagging it as false news, that's scary. Yep. That is scary that Facebook can be manipulated in that way.
What's even scarier, though, Dan, because my understanding is, yes, it got flagged as false, but then they looked at it and upheld the false. Like a human at Facebook looked at it.
A human at Facebook didn't look at it. I can promise you that. It didn't. Even if they said they did, they didn't. It just, There's too much. There's too much content there. And I actually reached out to her and offered to. I mean, obviously, I'm self-interested. I would love to have her content on Decaturish, but also,
they can't do that to Decaturish.
They can't do that to me. That's right. I've worked very hard over the last few years to make sure that my business model is not 100% dependent on what Facebook does or does not do, which is good because a lot of times when I see articles that I didn't post on my Facebook page get shared on Facebook, that means that I've done my job and people are reading it from the source and sharing it instead of me putting it in front of them and saying, here, go share this. Facebook is very scary in terms of how you can manipulate it, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened to her. Definitely would love to see her, work with us in some capacity. I think she is. I've invited her to join the Twitch show for sure, which would be awesome. But she's really busy. All right, at this point, let's get to another comment. Vespa says there's a quote from some Nimrod at the White House just the other day saying they didn't trust Fauci's input because he discounted what the Nimrod said was the number one driver behind reopening the economy, death rate. That says all there needs to be said about their position. Anasazi says, and we're going to trust the White House administration to take hospital data, re-COVID incidents, and analyze that data effectively to inform solutions? I think not. My son-in-law is a doctor, and said that there is no way that they will shaft the CDC bypass this to the White House. So we're about to argue over math in this country. We're about to have the biggest argument over math that has maybe ever been had in the history of this in this country, and we're not good at math.
Yeah,
Just
that op-ed was Peter Navarro, who is an economist, I think, and has, like, in his argument, this is not the first time he's done this, by the way. He was talking back in February about being able to interpret medical data just as well as the doctors and the epidemiologists that were looking at it. And in his justifications in February for ignoring the virus, he was statistically wrong. So what's astounding is that he still has, if you guys look, the White House actually has distanced themselves from his op-ed recently by saying, oh, that's just his opinion. We didn't ask for it, blah, blah, blah. I think because enough people took a look at his numbers and were like, you shouldn't be running anything economical, much less talking
I love
medicine.
whenever shit goes sideways in the Trump administration, there's always like a story a day later full of anonymous sources who are like, we didn't tell him to do that shit. We don't know where he got that idea. Wasn't from us, There's all these butt-covering stories that come out later about how we didn't tell Trump to shoot peaceful protesters so he could hold a Bible weird. Why would he tell them that? That's crazy. And that just, yeah, I guarantee you, if they're saying we didn't ask him to do that, they probably asked him to do that.
And if they didn't, although I disagree with you, I think that this White House is so chaotic and is so poorly managed that it is actually plausible that a senior advisor to the president published an editorial in a major newspaper without getting it cleared with anyone. It's actually plausible that happened, and I think that is scarier to me than them doing it intentionally. That's the ship we're all on right now, guys. It's just everybody running in every direction without anybody really in charge.
The only word I disagree with you there, Marjorie, is plausible. I would have used probable. I think that's the reality.
Whew. All right, so the world's we're getting a lot of subscriptions now, and so it's going da 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 da, and it's doing breaking news. You can't hear that, but I can hear it. So I'm like trying to talk, and then there's like stuff in my. But we've confirmed that we're all going straight to hell. We're doomed. Everybody's doomed. So let's talk about those elections for a second. Who are we gonna vote for to govern this crap pile? Who gets to rule the wasteland on August 11th? Who you voting for, Marjorie?
Oh, who am I voting for? Wow.
Maybe we shouldn't go there.
No. I actually don't mind saying that. There's the two big races that I will be voting on. Actually, three. There's a sheriff runoff. The sheriff runoff is kind of weird because it's just for it's not for the big primary. It's just would be a temporary term. There's a District 6 commission race. There's a District 1 commission county commission race. I can't vote in that one. I'm not in that district. I'm actually not in 6 either. So I can say I'm not voting for either person because I'm not in District 6 or 1. Although I do think that we have 2 impressive candidates with Ted Terry and Miriam Ahmad. I am very friendly with Ted. I do like Ted Terry, mayor of Clarkston. I know that is a race that people have some really strong opinions on. But there's also the House District 86, and that one I will be voting in because I am in House District 86. And it is Michelle Henson, who has been in the legislature for 30 years, running against Zulma Lopez, who has run Michelle always draws opposition. It's pretty consistent that she's had people run against her in the primary, but this was probably one of the most well organized challengers I've ever seen her have, and she pushed her into a runoff. I will personally say, as an unabashed Democrat, that I really value Michelle's experience in the House. The fact is that we're in the minority. And so it's very, very hard to get things done. And so I know sometimes there's this anti-incumbent feeling that people have of like, let's get rid of all these people. I have dear friends who say, I just go in and I vote for everybody who's not an incumbent. But strategically, if you're going to be in a minority where it's very difficult to get things done, understanding the committee structures, having some personal relationships in the county, being able to finesse some of the things that are done and move the needle a little bit. We have got some old hands from DeKalb that are Democrats in the legislature, and they are effective where I think a newcomer never would be able to be, because it's so difficult to do anything in the minority. So I love having Michelle's experience there, and I think that it's an important thing to keep for us right now.
So I will, going back to District 6 between Miriam Ahmad and Ted Terry. Alex Brown, our intern contributor, covered the DeKalb County Democratic debate on Monday, and they were pretty chippy during that debate. And at one point, Miriam said, "How come 12 of the former Clarkston City Council reps and current reps endorsed me and or endorsed somebody else and not you?" And Ted Terry said, "Well, who were they?" And damned if Miriam didn't have a whole list. She pulled out the whole list and read all 12 of them right there. So I thought that was pretty funny, to say the least. But yeah, that one's real chippy. Alex Brown wrote the story. It's on the homepage of Decaturish.com right now if you want to go read it. George Cheedy, what's your thoughts on the
So I
runoff?
still like Ted because he's been around for a long time, and it's nothing against Miriam, who I think is great, but I've just known Ted for a lot longer. And frankly, we need some municipal government leadership at the county level. Today, I think it was yesterday, the county grudgingly distributed a bunch of money from COVID relief to cities. And the idea that this needed to be some sort of like knife fight internally in order for 300,000 people who live in incorporated cities in the county, in order to get money like equitably distributed to them from the federal government, is a problem. Like I want to see somebody who can speak for that group of people. Also, I just think his political instincts are really solid, and we're going to need that kind of knife fighting. It's why I like Michelle. It's one of the three reasons I like Michelle.
Well, you're not going to get anybody to wear a mask if you don't have a knife. So
This is so. Yeah, look, Michelle's been around forever. Like she's been through three of these crises before. And so, like, when the budget negotiations start in 2021, she'll actually know what to do about it. Like, she'll know how to not get shivved in the cloakroom while they're trying to figure out the budget thing. There are two other things going on there, though, that bug me. And I'm just gonna dump it right now. So Zulma Lopez, whom I actually think is a fine person, a decent human being. I don't know her that well, but I don't have any sort of like deep personal animosity against her. However, she has voted in 2 Republican primaries in the last few years. She voted as a Republican in 2012 and 2016. And she's running for a Democratic seat. And that alone, I might be able to dismiss. She's Dax Lopez's wife, and Dax Lopez is a Republican. And so suddenly she looks like a crypto Republican running for a Democratic seat in a seat that's like 95%, votes 95% Democratic most of the time. She slid this under the radar. It hasn't really gotten out. I really didn't find out about it myself until recently. I don't think Democratic voters in the primary should be picking somebody like a brand new face where there are questions about whether or not that person is actually representing Democratic interests. Like right now, when the state's about ready to flip over, and Michelle might actually end up being in the majority. like again for the first time in like 15 years.
Well, I will say, as somebody from Alabama, progressives voting in a Republican primary is not that shocking to me,
Yeah,
because if progressives didn't vote in the Republican primary in Alabama, they wouldn't have a say in anything.
you're exactly right.
That's what.
Well, and
Go ahead.
I want to be fair. I'm a supporter of Michelle. To be fair to Zulma, one, people can't be held responsible for the behavior of their spouse.
Yeah.
I I also have an ex and definitely would never want to be held accountable for some of the things that he did. So James Carville married Mary Madeline. You know,
Yeah.
you can have differences in families. She has maintained that she is definitely a Democrat and says that, she voted in 2016 in a presidential primary because she hates Trump so much. And she voted in a presidential primary in 2012 because there's no competition on the Democratic side. And that is a plausible line. So it's a little bit of a complicated issue. There's definitely been talking about it and people who look up people's vote builder records and try to figure out what party they belong to.
Here's the one that I think people are sleeping on. Like, so there's still one Supreme Court seat or like Superior Court seat out. Like, and that's Mindy Pillow and Yolanda. I think her last name's Adams. Um,
I'm sorry, the singer Yolanda. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
Is her
Yolanda
name
something.
really? Okay, Yolanda Adams. I thought you were thinking of the
Let
singer.
me look it
That's
up.
why.
Y'all keep talking.
I thought it was
about that.
Yolanda Parker somebody. But
Thank you, Yolanda Parker Smith,
yes.
not Adams.
Okay.
Yolanda Parker Smith. The Parker Smith missed a runoff by probably 100 votes, something ridiculous like that. It was very, very close. I actually like Pillow, and she's won me over. I didn't say I was sort of pointedly saying either of these two folks are good. And it's not, again, nothing against Parker Smith. Pillow saw something I wrote about the race, and she's been pinging me, and we've been communicating regularly. She looks like she wants to be hyper responsive, and frankly, look, I hate the idea that we vote for judges at all, but if you're going to be voting for a judge, the idea that somebody's going to be responsive to the public is probably a good thing. So she won me. Like, that's like retail politics. Like, I think Pillow's probably a good pick.
Marjorie,
like, I'm going to vote for her.
Marjorie, we got somebody in the comments wanting to pick a fight with you.
Oh, that never happened.
Ben Bell. Well. He starts out. His name is
Ben Bell.
Iste Mucho is what his name is. Ben Bell here. Y'all gonna let Marjorie skate on her censorship? I don't.
If anybody doesn't know, I have a Facebook page, and sometimes I will delete comments if I.
Hey Marjorie, your sound's a little off.
Is it? Okay. Is it better now?
No.
You went full Minnie Mouse. I'm not sure what's going on.
Let me see. Let me try to fix that.
Yes, because
Ben
we
Bell,
want to
are
hear
you
this
trolling?
So just let me first, can I tackle this term censorship?
Sure.
Right?
Why not?
Private, like there is no freedom of speech for private. Like this concept that the Bill of Rights applies outside of the government. I get a little frustrated with. If you've got your own Facebook page and you want to erase people, do it. You have a right to do it. It's not censorship. It's not. Oh Lord, nobody's trampling on your free speech.
Well, when people, I have anonymous comments, so I deal with it even worse. Like, I need anonymous comments like I need a moat filled with alligators. Okay, like it's just one of those things. Like, I don't have any use for it. The people who get on there just are there to run their mouth. Like, they don't have jobs probably. I just don't. I don't have time for them.
Is my sound better now?
No.
A little bit better, but we can still hear you. So let's roll with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be real quick, so you don't have to listen to Minnie Mouse too long. I'll just say, echoing what you said, Dan. When you run
Facebook pages, when you try to moderate online communities so that you can have good discussion and it doesn't drive everybody away because it turns just nasty and scary. Sometimes people get mad because you say, I don't like that, can't say that here. It's part of it.
Yeah. I'm sure, like every other Facebook argument, it was very consequential and newsworthy, and I should assign 5 reporters to it right now.
Look, if full stop. If you don't want to get bland off of somebody's Facebook feed, don't be an asshole.
Ben,
Pretty simple.
Speaking of,
Pretty
I
simple.
banned so many people.
we
I
won't.
want to hear what Crystal has to say.
Yeah.
no. Well, I was going to ask basically based off of what the comment he just made. I saw people on Facebook in his group, and they were like flagging him down while he was on vacation. It was like, hey, there are black people with guns. We need to know why. Right?
Oh yeah, the Decaturish Facebook page. Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked what you said about it. In terms of you were basically like, I don't see this as news at the moment because we're an open carry state. And you were like, they can own guns. But what was intriguing to me was how many people were like, even after you made that statement, how many people were like, I want to hear the backstory behind this. What's going on? What's happening? And that's very interesting that so many people think there needs to be something going on in order for someone to carry a gun.
Yeah.
Like
The backstory is the people
but-
who the backstory is the people who started this country. It's like, do you think we need a Second Amendment? Yeah. You think people are going to be confused by that? No, they'll figure that out.
right.
It's like guns will never advance beyond a musket. We don't have to worry about that. It's fine.
I actually
Right.
find myself regretting not having gone out there. I really thought about it, and I was on time. I was on timeout after like the whole getting punched.
I don't know why you're not still on timeout, George. That's
No, I'm definitely on timeout now. I am
I'm
on
actually
restriction.
surprised.
I'm
I'm
grounded.
surprised you're actually at home or in an office space versus like
Yeah.
being out and about every time.
I'm totally
Yeah.
grounded. Like I can't do anything until until I have the will sorted out, so that like if I die, it doesn't end up in probate. Like I'm not kidding. Like,
Every time George references a journalistic hero, I get nervous. Diogenes, Spider Jerusalem. I'm like, dude, these are not people to model your career.
I know.
I'm terrified for you.
So here's the thing, like the guys with the guns over at Stone Mountain, like, so when I went out to the Wendy's like 4 or 5 days ago and was told to leave unceremoniously again, like, so the bunch of them that were there were wearing jackets that were from this same Not Fucking Around coalition that showed up at Stone Mountain. It's this, I don't know if it's the same people, but the folks at the Wendy's now are affiliated with the folks who went to the Stone Mountain thing. Like, and I can't, and I sense that this organization, it's a coalition, so it's an organization of other organizations. They have something to do with what was going on with those barricades that ultimately ended up with the shootout or a shooting and the death of Sequoia Turner. The kid this morning that turned himself in, the one that's like, he says he's a witness. That kid lives in Stone Mountain. And I've reached out to his family. Like, I'm a little worried. About, never mind me. I'm going to be fine. I'm worried about a 19-year-old kid who looks like he was a witness to a murder around a group of people who are very protective about like not going to jail, basically. Like, I worry about that kid. So had I been at the Stone Mountain March, I bet I would have made this connection 2 weeks ago, and I didn't.
Well, I personally am glad to see you walking around and breathing. I hope we can keep that good track record going. I will say on the Wendy's thing, what happened to Rashard Brooks was terrible, and I am not generally opposed to the idea of there being some sort of a memorial to him. But somebody is going to have to break down for me what the exact point of occupying a burned down Wendy's is for months on end, because I'm not. White people should not be judging black protests. First of all, so I put that out there with that caveat. But I was actually having a discussion with one of the people who were supporting the protests over there. So I'm like, what's the goal? And they're like, well, we're gonna have a memorial. I'm like, well, what if the owner doesn't want a memorial? And they said, well, it's a black business owner, and we think he'll do it. I'm like, yeah, but what if he doesn't want to? And they said, well, if he builds the Wendy's again, we're just gonna burn it down again. So I have to ask.
So I can answer this.
Yeah. So yeah, you go.
So, like, there's the reason they're saying, and then there's the real reason. The reason they're saying that they're doing it is because they want a community center of some sort, and specifically that they want community control. That's what I heard over and over again Saturday. That they want, that they don't want external forces, however you want to define that, to have. They want to limit the amount of influence that external forces have on how their community presents itself and is policed, and so they want to be able to. They want a physical entity that will reflect their autonomy as a group, and it's horseshit. What I strongly suspect is going on is that it's a relatively fringe political group, like fringe within the black community, fringe political group that is looking for some sort of win to say, hey, look, we did this, we got this result, you should consider us legitimate now. And that since we are able to do these things, you need us at the table when we're talking about other things, so that they can, it's a means of building attention and gathering legitimacy, even though their methods are completely illegitimate. And I can guess at their politics, but I don't want to guess. I want to know. And it's one of the things I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, I thought it was very amusing when the people that were over there said, well, the media, that's not true. The media is not telling our side of the story. And I'm thinking, well, if you would stop threatening to shoot every journalist that comes by your protest, the media might be more inclined to tell your side of the story. You know, it's funny how that works. Most of us don't generally like being shot at unless we're in a war zone, not the United States of America. But
God, I was going to say, I don't necessarily. We back and forth a little bit about this on the social medias. I don't necessarily think that the initial steps at occupying a spot of land like that needs to have a clear answer on what the end goal is at the beginning, right? I mean, like, part of it is just taking the ground is step one, and sort of canvassing and developing the perspective on where to take it is step two. So I'm not totally upset that there isn't immediately a clear answer on what the objectives are. What I am definitely upset by, though, is if you make it extremely clear police aren't welcome, if you make it extremely clear that a peacekeeping force of any entity coming from the city is unwelcome, then you have to demonstrate how you're going to keep the peace there. Like if you erase the ability of the common public entity to keep the peace, then it's on you to keep the peace.
Right.
And if you what you can't do is eliminate access of the police and say you don't want any police there, but you're not the one responsible if anarchy erupts in the space that you control.
Right.
And so that's where I think there's a pretty big issue. Like if they want legitimacy, then demonstrate you can keep the peace there. If you're not interested in keeping the peace there, then the police are going to come, and you're not going to have that position anymore. Like there's not a middle ground there. Like you can't have anarchy in a spot in the middle of a city where 8-year-old, 9-year-old girls get killed. Just can't happen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Crystal, we're gonna wrap up here shortly, but Crystal's got a couple of really good stories coming out that I want to touch upon briefly. One is about businesses that are pivoting to new revenue models in the pandemic, and one is about black banking. Can you give us a quick summary on how those are going?
Those are going really good. I've actually talked to a lot of people, Dan. I owe you a story right now that I need to
Yeah,
wrap up.
that's my polite
That
way of
I think
saying
is
your
pretty
deadline was at
cool.
2. No, just
Turn it
kidding.
in, yeah. No, I did tell you that, and it's been like a crazy 2 weeks. But I really like the stories because, as you know, I try to focus on the job market. I really One of the main reasons why I wanted to do the pivoting story. So basically, pivoting is a buzz term that has been all over the internet and has been talked about a lot. Basically, in terms of companies looking for new ways to kind of stay alive amid COVID-19. So some of them have had to do things that they never would have thought of doing. I spoke to Stephen Karth at King of Pops. I absolutely love their popsicles, so it was great to talk to him. And some of the things that he kind of did to pivot um, was really interesting. Some other companies who went from making marketing, big marketing what do you call those backdrops for trade shows
Hmm.
that have now pivoted into making essential equipment for to protect employees at stores and healthcare workers um, and masks. A lot of companies that are making masks to kind of keep up with demand. So that's just really a story to inspire other businesses to find ways to stay afloat amid those times, and hopefully they'll gain some kind of ideas from those stories from the different a lot of business owners that I spoke to. That was part of the thing. I was like, I spoke to a lot of people. I have to add all of this stuff. So that story is actually going to be a lot longer than what I usually write. But I think it's good. And then the black banking story. So what I'm interested in is a part of my protest has been. I know we've talked about some people who've been on vacation and been, out of their homes because I want to protect my daughter. I have not been anywhere. So part of my protest is to kind of use my pen as that way to continue to inform people, even once, kind of the buzz about the movement kind of dies down. I want to keep those conversations going. What really struck me was, sorry, what really truly struck me was there was a small clip that came out from a guy, and I've actually ordered the book called The Color of Law. And he basically said that the government, at some point, when they started building suburban communities all across the country and giving these people big opportunities to giving people opportunities, selling homes, giving lenders opportunities to sell homes. The only stipulation was they couldn't sell homes to Black people. That was the only stipulation. So basically, he was basically pointing out how basically from those very homes that white people were able to buy and Black people were basically excluded from purchasing, but could actually afford them at the time that this was happening. That basically that has caused a massive gap in income as far as when you compare white versus Black income by upwards of 60%, because those same homes they could get equity out of, they could send their kids to school, they could sell those homes and get an even bigger home. Those were, so basically I said it to say that what I want to find out from the stories is how will actually supporting Black banks empower our communities? Is there a direct tie to that? So if you start it, let's just say if I were to open up an account and I find 10 other people that open up an account, and we get to where 100,000 of us maybe open up an account with a Black bank and start putting our funds in there versus white institutions, what will that actually do for our communities? From my understanding, from some of the people that I've interviewed, I mean, it will open up more opportunities for. Would it open up more opportunities for Black people?
I have
I
lots of
mean,
thoughts about this. I want to read your story first.
Yeah, I think
okay,
this is a great
okay,
discussion to pick up next time. We will be back
okay.
on Friday. Guests to be determined. I might just read Edgar Allan Poe's *The Mask of the Red Death*. I don't know. I'm in that kind of mood.
Hey, before
yeah.
we go, I just want to show you something because Sarah just came back in with the mail. So so my trip to Grady to go get my face checked out, when I got whacked, like just got the bill. Now, note that I'm not freaking out because the insurance will pay it, but I thought my insurance was on their thing and they didn't have it. So this is the number.
That's not bad.
Jesus.
Yeah, I actually thought you.
No, that's atrocious. What's bad is us thinking that's not bad. Like we've been trained. What in the Sam hell? It's like food for a family for a month.
Yeah, it's a mortgage payment.
Came in with
Good
like
Christ.
a whole patch on his eye. Like I thought it was gonna be way more than that.
I thought it was gonna be like $500,000.
That is what is bad about this. Like that literally is what is so bad about
I
this.
can deal with.
That's
Like I'm insured. It's like that's not a chance in hell I'm paying that. But
All right. Well, Crystal, Hans, George, Marjorie, thank you all so much for spending your time with us today. I will invite you back Friday if you're interested. We are definitely kind of loose this week with our scheduling, but that's okay. Like, I enjoy getting to talk with smart people and shoot the shit for an hour, so that's awesome. If you enjoy our show, please check us out every Wednesday and Friday at 6 right here on Twitch. If you want to comment, create an account, sign up, and put some comments. You can accuse Marjorie of censorship or accuse me of being too smart and handsome or whatever you want to do. That's fine. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But thank you all so much for watching us, and we hope you have a good evening, and we will see you this Friday at 6. Have a good one, y'all.